Welcome to the John Sporting Goods Podcast. You're going to get expert insight and tips for fishing the Puget Sound, San Juan Islands, and tributaries. I'm your host, Connor Martinez, and owner of John Sporting Goods in Everett, Washington. Welcome to the podcast, and let's get fishing. Welcome back to the John Sporting Goods Podcast. We have a good one lined up for you guys today. We are going to be talking about San Juan Island Lingcod, which we fish a little bit differently than we do down in the Puget Sound. You can use similar tactics, but we're going to use a lot more artificial stuff. So I got two of the best. I got Ben Rosenbach, Mixed Metal Outdoors, and then we have Joey Pyburn from the Outdoor Line, and we are going to pick their brains and figure out how they like to catch lingcod up in the San Juans. We'll go over the rules first. You got a 26 to 36 inch rule, so you have to keep them in that slot limit. You are running barbless hooks, and there is a restriction on the depth that you can fish. It's in 120 feet of water or less, which we do get them in pretty shallow water. And then to be legal, you have to have one of these rockfish descenders rigged and ready to deploy a rockfish on your boat. So a lot of people ask, do they have to be rigged? And yes, they do. You have to have a separate rod for them. So if you do get a rockfish, you can pull them up, stick them on here, and send them down as quick as possible. So those are your basic rules, and we are going to get into it. We're going to start with kind of our artificial stuff here. We got a lot of swim baits. Fisherman's Gold makes some swim baits. You got my Storm swim baits, and we also have a new swim bait by Fisherman's Gold. So we'll let Ben talk about and kind of hear what he likes to use for these lingcod.
The fun part about using the artificials, it's a little more interactive than
rod in hand.
Sure. Rod in hand, working your baits than either the live bait fishing or trolling frozen baits. Like Connor said, the cool part is there's so many products available to us nowadays. Brock down there at Fisherman's Gold has just come out with some new swim baits. I was messing around with them last night a little bit. They're going to fish amazingly. They're a nice soft bait for me with these plastics. The softer they are, the better they're going to swim, the more action you're going to get out of them. It also means you're going to go through more baits. Definitely. But there's also, I'll show you some ways to prevent that. There's 100 different kinds of heads. These are the bullet heads that Connor's got here. They have some that are shaped a little more like a herring head, kind of in a triangle pattern. Kalen makes some. You can use the round heads. The bullet heads and the triangle heads, in my opinion, fish a little better. They give a little more action to your bait. The heavier baits it won't, but the lighter baits it will. I mean, you get a 10 or 12 ounce bullet head, it's going to drop straight down and not stop for anything.
For sure.
Bigger the bait, the bigger the fish you're going to catch.
Yep.
You know, like we were just talking, these smaller swim baits, you're going to catch a lot of fish, but a lot of them are going to be undersized, especially up in the San Juans. There's a lot, or in the last 2 years anyway, there's been a lot of undersized lingcod. So keep that in mind. I actually like a 9-inch swim bait better than these smaller ones, regardless of action.
Yeah. And the nice part about the swim baits, they're actually pretty easy to fish. I mean, you can fish them a couple different ways.
And it's fun.
It's way fun, dude. Like when people come in and they're like, hey, I've never fished lingcod. I'm going up to the San Juans. How should I do it? I put a swim bait in their hand. You can fish it where you drop it, hit the bottom, bring it up, and you just let the boat pull it across whatever structure you're fishing. Or if you're a little bit more advanced, like Ben, you can actually cast them at the shoreline and kind of drop them down the hill back to the boat.
You can troll them, fish them vertically, cast them, back troll them if you got enough current. You really can't screw it up as long as you're on the bottom.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure. And it's very effective. Most days.
Most days. There are days where, like, you know, when me and Joey went up a couple of years ago, I mean, they just wasn't happening.
No. So we pitched for hours.
Yeah, I think we caught one.
Yeah.
And before we switched over to the frozen baits. So rigging them, you know, I like the trailer hooks on some I don't. Yeah. Just because your trailer hooks also are what's going to catch most of your undersized fish. You can leave it up to you. Whether you're willing to risk having one hook on there. That's how I fish it. It seems to be a little less grabby. I'm willing to miss a few strikes if I have to, just to, one, avoid catching undersized fish, two, losing baits. Sure. One thing I've been doing, a little pro tip, we'll call it, I've been taking zip ties where the hook comes out, and on these swim baits like this, right up at the head, I take a zip tie and zip it around there because that's the two places these things usually rip out.
That's what I do too.
Yeah, it'll give you 3 times the life to your baits. Brock probably doesn't want us saying that, but that's what
the other thing that stinger hook in the back is going to do is it is going to kind of protect that swim bait and save your tails.
What happens?
But you will get hung up a little bit more often if you're not careful and you're not keeping that thing just up off the bottom.
Yeah, and it's hard for guys to look at it and they're like, without this, there's a 9-inch bait and you've got 3 inches of it with a hook in it. You know, well, if you're a keeper size lingcod, it's gonna engulf that
swallow the whole thing
a second, right? Sure. And they're not like salmon to where they're keyed in on the tail of the bait all the time. They're just looking to kill, right? It's they don't.
And a lot of the time, lingcod are, like I fish them live bait a lot, and they will grab middle.
Right from the side.
Middle of bait.
Right from the side. They're deadly enough that they'll kill a bait that quick to where they can still flip it around. They still got to swallow it head first, right? Just like any other bait, but they're really aggressive, really aggressive. And we fish these things from 10 feet of water all the way down to 120 feet, right? Just kind of depends on where you're fishing at, what you like to fish, how deep you like to fish. The color, you know, obviously your greens and your browns are going to probably dominate most of the time just because that's it matches the color of your green lean, your small lingcod, your pile perch, your flounders, whatever it may be. It's matching the hatch, so to speak. But there's also days where a fluorescent pink one will outfish everything.
Sure.
You know, so I always, you know, have 3 or 4 rods throwing the norm, and then I'll always have a couple of rods.
Start playing with some different
white,
stuff.
Man,
see if
glow
you get something
white.
to pop.
Glow white catches everything in Puget Sound. We just went through a winter blackmouth season where the white got, and it just dominated, right? From salmon to lingcod to halibut, whatever, glow white just flat out catches fish.
Yeah,
so
for sure. I saw a lot of the purples too.
Sure.
Especially up in the San Juans, it seems like purple's kind of a popular color.
Yep.
And this chartreuse head always works, man. Chartreuse down there always works. I was going to mention this. On these swim baits, you might not want to put the assist hook just because this tail's back there flicking around, and what'll happen is that assist hook will hook this tail, and then it's not swimming anymore. This is
you can also, though, bury that assist hook. So if you don't use the Dacron and just use a short, like 60 or 80 pound chunk of monofilament, you can bury that second hook in the body of the bait too.
Yeah. Because the main thing that's wiggling down there is this tail.
Yep.
I mean, it's not the whole body. You're just looking for this tail to be paddling back there, which is what it does. Yeah.
Sure. So, and there's a lot of companies making these swim baits. AAA,
Big Hammer.
Yeah, the Big Hammer. You guys seen those down at Three River. They got some really neat new color patterns out. I mean, just about every saltwater sporting goods store is going to have a pile of these sitting in there.
Yeah.
If you do pick your baits up, in my opinion, if you pick them up and they don't bend like that, they're too stiff of a bait.
Yeah, they ain't going to swim very good.
So it's not saying they won't catch fish. They're just saying it'd be as efficient. And one trick you can do is take those stiffer baits home and boil a pot of water and tip just about 2/3 of the bait, the tail section, in that boiling water real quick and pull it out, and it'll actually soften that plastic.
Yeah.
We've been doing it for years. So, but again, like you said, the more you soften it, the more your baits are going to get torn
That's another pro tip.
Yeah. Another pro tip.
I was going to ask, what pound jig heads are you or what ounce jig heads are you typically using on these?
It just depends on what we're doing with them.
Yeah.
If we're casting them anywhere from 1/2 ounce to 2 ounces,
Yeah, super light.
Casting anything over 2 ounces, like we're just talking, is asking for trouble. Snapping baits off midair and watching them sail over the top of Orcas Island, and, or backlashes that you fix when you get home type of deal.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to run the appropriate amount of weight depending on
depth,
how you're fishing in depth.
Yep.
And if you're, probably one of my favorite ways to fish for lingcod is setting up the boat, casting to the shoreline in, as shallow as 5 feet of water. And then with that light jig head, you're almost guessing, you're counting. It's dropped about 4 feet. Now I'm a couple cranks and a pop, let it drop, and walking that thing down.
Totally.
And then just the strikes are just
they're furious.
You're bass fishing at that point, and it's so much fun.
So fun.
I get a lot of people in the store, especially if they're fishing up at the San Juans, dude. They're using 12 and 16 ounce jig heads, and I'm like, you do not need that much weight. Yeah. You need. So I would figure we talk about some boat control, because that's probably the number one way for you to be a successful lingcod fisherman is controlling your boat. So let's say we have what position do you want your boat? Where do you want the current, from stern to bow or bow to stern? How are we figuring this out?
It's not only about current, it's about wind too.
Yeah.
The wind is going to spin your boat.
Sure.
Right. It's going to dominate. It's not going to dominate the speed and direction of the boat, but it's going to dominate the direction the boat is facing.
Sure.
90% of the time. So you're always going to have the stern to the wind, and your drifts are going to be adjusted by that more than if there is no wind. You always want the stern of the boat facing into the current, right? And you operate the boat in reverse.
Yeah, you're kicking it in.
You're in reverse, and basically the operator of the boat's just watching the angle of the lines, right? You don't want them live bait fishing. You want them straight
vertical.
Up and down.
These
if you're working swim baits or eels or something, you want a little bit of drag to it, because that's adding action to it at the same time. Plus 100%. You want to keep moving, you want to sit so stagnant. So you always want the butt of the boat. What I do is I open, if I operate from inside most of the time, once I get my guys dialed in, just because the main motor is so much quicker and efficient than the kicker, to keep the boat spun the way it needs to be and keep the speed where it's at, I'll open the window of the captain's seat, and I'll look at my starboard side midship rod, right? That's my telltale. So, and I just kind of watch that line. You don't ever want it more than, say, 10 or 15 degrees.
Right.
And you just, it starts to get swung back, pop it reverse, watch it swing down, and then just let it out, let it go a little bit. It's very active. Yeah. It's not a set it and forget it fishery.
Yeah, there's a guy driving the boat, running
constantly.
The boat the whole
Currents are changing, depths are changing, all that kind of stuff. And you need your guys, you need aggressive guys on the rods too.
I tell guys all the time, it's like, your goal is to go out and catch your lingcod or anything really, but especially when it comes to any type of bottom fishing, you got to have a guy. Everybody has to have a job. Totally. You got to have your fishermen that are going to be actively, hardcore, aggressively fishing, and then, obviously everybody wants to fish, but you're going to be way more efficient if you designate one person to run that boat, because that's a job in itself. That if you're trying to fish and run the boat, you can do that, but if you're learning, or it's you've only been out there a few times doing this, it's key to have somebody just run that boat or take turns.
Sure.
So that person running the boat can focus on running the boat. Like Ben said, I'm always looking at the angles of my guys' lines on the boat. I'm the one controlling. I'm constantly having to look at the chart plotter to make sure I'm covering the structure properly. It really will catch you a lot more fish if everybody has their job on the boat. When somebody hooks up, maybe you got one guy who his job is get his gear in, get it out of the way, get the gaff or the net or however you're going to deal with your fish, so that the driver can keep the other guys actively fishing and not have to leave the helm.
Absolutely, yeah. Is there like a sweet spot as far as how fast your drift is like 0.8 to 1 mile an hour, or is just
it's just like downrigger fishing, your line angle. Everything's going to be determined by the current speed. Those fish down there, the bait in the water they are eating is moving at the speed of that current.
Sure.
Right. So it kind of works out in our advantage to some extent because it keeps your baits moving roughly the same speed as everything else is down underwater.
Yeah, and San Juan's, you have so many islands and stuff and pinnacles and reefs. I mean,
man.
That current can be really, really tricky as far the tide could be going out, but the flow of the water can be going a completely different way than you would expect it. So.
You'll watch the guys that are really good at this. We get out there and we'll get to a spot. Every day it's different.
Totally.
Right. Depending on how big the tides are, where you're at in the tide, water can move the opposite direction sometimes from day to day, depending on, you got a big tide one day, small tide the next. It's moving north to south one day, it's moving south to north the next, just because the way that water pushes through all those islands, the harder you push, softer you push, it's going to move in different directions. So the first thing we'll do is we'll get out where we're going to fish, stop the boat, put it neutral, and just sit there.
See what it does.
And see where you're going to go, right? And then you can look at your chart plotter and say, okay, I'm moving diagonally across this structure. I want to start my drift here, and I want to wind up here, right? And that way you can kind of plan, grid everything out to where, you're making effective drifts all the time.
Yeah, you're lining your boat up to see where your drift's going to be.
And you can kind of change your course a little bit, without jerking on the gear too much. But for the most part, you're kind of at the mercy of where you set up at.
And the other thing you got to remember is these fish are really aggressive. When they're on the feed, when they're on the chew, they are aggressive. So I always tell guys, or whoever's driving the boat, make sure that you got your tracks on. Mm-hmm. So you can see where you've been, so you know where to go next. And then say, I'm running the boat, you and Ben are on the boat, and you're like, you just get hammered, right? And you're like, oh, that felt like a good one, just slam me. Yeah. But we didn't get him. Boom, I'm dropping a waypoint.
Mark it.
And we're probably going to come back to that fish and throw something else at him, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to catch that fish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Cool. And then I wanted to mention what I like to use. So these Fisherman's Gold swim baits we're using with jig heads. And then these Storm swim baits, these are 7/8 of an ounce, so they're really, really light. So the way I rig them up, which I have it in the front here, but I'm running it just like I would live bait. I have a Slido in front of it. I got, a few feet a leader. There you go. That's perfect. Yeah. You could see I have a Slido in front of it, and I'm going to be snapping my weight to my Slido. And so I can adjust my weight whenever I want. Typically, I'm putting anywhere from 3 to 4 ounces on it in front of my swim bait. So my cannonball is what's hitting the bottom. I'm bringing it up off the bottom, and my swim bait's trailing it. So
and that thing just looks like,
dude, everything
that has
down
Shiner
there.
Perch written all over it.
100%.
Yes, it does.
That's the bunker color. They also make herring colored ones. They make a chartreuse one, which we've caught fish on all of them. But that's my number one. When I go up to the San Juans on the opener, that for sure will be sent down first. And like Ben was saying, you catch kind of smaller fish on these smaller baits, and then we'll have a couple of dudes running these big eels. And 9 times out of 10, if a lingcod grabs this thing, it's generally going to be a good one. So you kind of have to mix and match. I don't know if it's a nursery up in the San Juans or what it is, but you go through a lot more smaller ones, undersized fish, which is fun to catch still. And then you come through with these 4 and 8 ounce eels, and you get kind of the larger fish. So. Cool. Okay. Now let's talk about some of this herring, because there is an alternative. You can run live bait up in the San Juans.
You can, absolutely.
If you can find kelp greenling, if you can find flounders up there, which I've done, you can absolutely run live bait up there, and it works extraordinarily well.
Yeah, and it's
just harder to find up there.
It's a very similar setup to this.
Yeah.
This is your basic mooching rig. When I'm running live bait, most of the time I'll run a Gamakatsu circle hook.
Yeah, for sure.
As my front hook. And maybe I'll run this thing out a little longer depending on the size of my bait, obviously. Yeah. If you're running greenling up there, you want, if you catch a big greenling, doesn't mean you're not going to catch a lingcod on it, but you're going to catch a bigger lingcod on it.
Yeah.
You really want those, if you can find those little greenling that are 7, 8 inches, they're money. I mean, you just get bit on them so quick. But, if you're up there, and like Ben mentioned, we fished, it was, I think, a couple years ago.
Yeah. Yep.
We just went up buddy fishing before Ben started working up there. So we ran swim baits, we were casting, and working all the cracks and edges of some of the islands up there. And which is, again, it's just so much fun because part of it is like, I love like seeing how close I can get to the shore without bouncing the thing off the rocks.
Yep.
Especially when it's
it really
Ben's gear.
fine tunes your casting skills.
Especially when it's my gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's Ben stuff, so really I don't care.
friend.
I try to get as close as I can. But we ran swim baits the whole time, and just wasn't happening for us.
Yeah.
So really simple, right? Like, I don't care, dude. I'll get my hands dirty.
Stinky.
So
They're probably
these
dirty
I just left my shop, so I grabbed a package of these are blue label herring. These are great size for Lingcod. They're eating these all the time.
Yeah.
If you haven't done a lot of mooching, this is a great time to kind of hone your skills, right?
Absolutely.
Because this thing just has to spin. They're not nearly as particular as salmon. So, if the swim bait thing isn't happening, which it wasn't that day, we switched over and we basically go to kind of a basic mooching rig, and we're gonna kind of you can practice your cut plug doing this. I cut mine a little goofy back to me.
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah, and
You're blowing my mind right now.
I don't brine them, okay, for Lingcod. I just run them
Right out of the pack.
right out of the package. They're still a little frozen. I don't even care. I'm going to run my back hook through, pull that through, and then, I usually am going right through along the spine.
Yeah.
And you can play with that hook placement, and you're going to get a really tight spin or a wobbly spin. But again, it doesn't matter. As long as it spins, they will eat it. And it's a great way to just kind of play with your spin on your cut plug for when you do move to like mooching for salmon. You can then, if you want to kind of keep this hook from hanging down and you want it to be right in the fish, you can run this through kind of mid-body, pull that thing around. You can even just kind of set it in right there.
Yeah.
And that thing will spin just fine. And it's super effective. And then what that allows you to do is kind of just, what structure you're fishing over. Now you can strategically drop those cut plugs down. You have a line counter on your reel. Say that structure's 57 feet. You tell your guys, drop them to 54, 56 even. Get them right down there, but bring them up a little, drop them back down. And you can do that by just gently lifting your rod and then dropping it back down, and that thing's going to flutter around. And it's just effective. They almost can't help but eat that herring. They encounter them all the time up there. So, and it's a fun way to fish. If you have inexperienced people on your boat, put the rods in the rod holders.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't let them be messing around with them. Put them in the rod holders, and then the guy controlling the boat is controlling how those baits are presented. And then they don't need to grab that rod until it is bent over and it is pumping, and then at that point, you got them.
Yeah, for sure. And the other part about it is, like, we run from Everett, so to go up there and fish for live bait, you're wasting an hour or two doing that. This is such an effective way because you go up there, swim baits, you got your herring. I mean, you get up there and just start fishing right away.
That day that we fished, I mean, like I said, we worked probably 2 or 3 hours, pretty hard, pitching swim baits and eels, and I think we got one sub.
Yeah.
And then we switched over, and we had all our fish within like an hour.
Took about an hour, and it's fun.
That brings up another point are we treating this like salmon and everything else? Are we fishing around tide changes? I'm assuming an hour before, hour after, or
just like in the San Juans. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but they do seem to bite better on the outgoing, just like anything else up there. It's if you really are worried about it, it's an outgoing tide thing, because what happens, you get this flood, right? And all the little bays, all the little points, the water pushes up into it, the bait gets pushed up into it. Once it starts to recede, that bait and everything starts washing out of those bays around the points and everything, and these lingcod get out on these, whether it's a giant rock under the water, a point coming off an island, wherever, and they'll get into little ambush points, right? And ambush, it's just kind of they know that's a good feed time for them, but it's not saying I gone up and fished just incomings and been done in an hour, you know? So, outgoing are ideal, you know, just like with the salmon fisheries up there, but it doesn't mean you need to plan your trips around it.
And that tide, if it's cranking, you know, not affecting it too much, or are we trying to plan it like, okay, we got a high slack tide at 7, we want to fish the outgoing, so, you know, an hour after that or an hour, 2 hours after that.
If you want to itemize your trips like that, that would be ideal. You know, try to get around into the softer water times.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I've noticed up there.
As that ebb starts to slow.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, we as salmon fishermen, we know when we catch rockfish and lingcod when we're salmon fishing and our gear's close to the bottom. It's kind of the last 2 hours or even the last hour of that ebb where things start to slow, and those fish are more apt to, you know, they don't have to battle that heavy current, and those lingcod will come up off the bottom and grab our spoons or our anchovy when we're salmon fishing. So just kind of, I always keep track of that when I'm fishing, like when am I encountering these other species that I'm not actually targeting,
right?
You know, and in Puget Sound and the San Juans, all of it, it's kind of the last part of that ebb where things start to slow, and also the bait fish get more active at that point because they're able to, you know, get around and feed.
Yep.
Totally.
So but I tell guys all the time, look, I pretty much am at the boat leaving in the dark and I'm going to fish.
We're going fishing.
I'm fishing all day anyway, but you really want to make sure you're in your number 1 or number 2 spot at that back end of that ebb.
For sure.
You know, but search around, you know, find those spots on a big ripper. Like we looked at the tide, we got a 5 a.m. high tide on May 1st going to minus 0.6.
Yeah.
So there's some water movement there. Find those spots where, you know, you have an island and maybe it has like a, you know, it's relatively round, but it has a point that comes out and a little bay that goes in, and this current is pushing up against that island, and then it's hitting that point and it's shooting straight out, and there's a pocket behind it that's relatively slow. Those lingcod are going to be in there because they don't want to be out in that heavy current. Target spots like that when the tide's running heavy, and you're still going to catch fish, and you're going to learn stuff. And then just in the back of your mind, you know, well, as this thing slows, I know where we need to be.
For sure. Yeah. Take a mental note for sure. And the other thing I was thinking about is what are we looking for on the bottom as far as structure? I mean, there's almost an unlimited supply up in the San Juans.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
You got rocky structures. You're looking for reefs. We do really good on reefs. You do little plateaus, little flat tabletops. Those all work good. But, what do you think about that?
Current breaks.
Yeah.
You know, I've spent enough time up there. You start to learn spots that have a really good rock structure, really good current breaks, but aren't jagged to the point where I'm going to burn through a mountain of gear, right? You're going to hit bottom, right? I mean,
you're going to
regardless where I'm at, I'm confident enough, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to drop it straight to the bottom and pound it off the rocks every time because I know I can get it up quick enough not to let it sit there.
Yeah.
So you start to learn places that that's got good structure, got good current break, got good depth, decent flow, and you're not going to eat a bunch of gear.
Yeah.
Right? There's places up there you can't drop a swim bait or an eel or a bait or anything.
As soon as it hits the bottom, it's like
you're going to break all 6 rods off instantly. You know, you just learned that. You're like, we're not going to.
Yeah, we're leaving.
We got 50 other spots we can go before I have to.
Every
go start
time that happens, Connor's like,
yeah,
they got to come buy more gear.
No, I don't. I mean, you are going to lose gear. It's just the nature of the beast up there. And like these guys are saying, you have to be aggressive. If you're bashful at the bottom, it's the same as Chinook when we're blackmouth fishing. The guys that aren't pounding it on the bottom and bringing it up a little bit are typically the guys that are struggling to catch it.
And I just tell my guys, look, you have a line counter reel, okay?
Totally.
Yep.
I'm calling out depths the whole time.
Yep.
So if I tell you bottom is 57 feet, you're watching that line counter. When it gets to 57,
you know
I want you to be ready because a lot of times there's a little swing there. So maybe they hit at 62.
Yep.
Sure.
but I don't want that thing hitting the bottom and sitting there.
Right.
That's when you're going to get hung up.
Yeah.
I want them watching 57. They're looking up at the chart plotter. Okay, still 57. Bang, they hit it 62.
Yep.
Get that thing popping.
Yep.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you get hung up. With a lot of these electric eels, what I'll do is I tell my guys, I want you to hit bottom, and I want you to reel that thing up, and then I want you to visualize what that thing is doing down there. It's kind of swimming around. This tail's wiggly, and it's cruising above the rocks. And then that's what I want them slowly raising it and then dropping it back down, and almost swimming this thing along the contour of the rock.
Absolutely.
And that keeps them from getting hung up as much. But then every once in a while, I want them reconnecting with the bottom.
Yep.
You just made a really good point about working these baits. I watch these guys, and they look like they're snagging humpies up on the Skagit. You know, they're just giving these hard fast yanks.
Yeah, visualize what this thing is.
We do
doing
not
down
do
there.
that.
No.
And there's
It's
two
swimming,
reasons. Yeah,
like a fish would swim,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you see guys jerking these things, and then it shoots 10 feet up and comes back down. I want it down in that zone where that fish is living, just swimming around. Yeah, I want it moving around a bit, but I don't want big jerky motions. I want that thing naturally swimming along.
I was to say
I just like to
unnatural.
have constant contact with the bait, right? So if you're jerking up like that, just letting it drop, you're missing strikes.
Yeah, you get a big bow in your line.
It's going to take you longer to feel bottom
Because it's going to pile into the bottom.
And number 3, when you do that, this bait shoots straight up and flips over like that. Eventually, you're going to get your line wrapped over your hook. And now you're out there working your butt off for a lingcod with a bait that's not fishing right anymore, right? It does not. Be aggressive in what you're doing, not aggressive with your jigging.
Totally.
Right? I mean, save that for Chinook fishing or whatever, right?
And the other thing I was going to mention is I'm using these kind of lower profile bait casters. I got a Dakota 300 and then I have a Tranks 300. And these are all push button. You push a button to put it into free spool, and then the second you do any sort of crank on the handle of the reel, it engages the spool. And what I tell people is you put it in a free spool, you're dropping, you're in 57 feet of water, you get to 60 and you feel your jig hit the bottom. I put my thumb on the spool and I immediately lift up. And then I engage the spool and then I start doing my thing. Instead of having to flip a lever, because that lever, I mean, that 1 second or even 1.5 seconds could be the amount of time that thing needs to get snagged on the bottom. So I know you like using the bait casters. I think they're so much more effective. And if you're not familiar with fishing lingcod and fishing on the bottom, this is a great way for you to get your gear off the bottom really quickly and then begin your troll or your drag.
Yep.
So cool. Okay. Anything else you guys want to mention? I think we covered a lot of it. I can't think of anything else we need.
You know, we talked about spots.
Yes.
And the entire San Juan's, every inch of it has lingcod in it. I'll tell you that. Navionics is your best friend up there. I'm not kidding. You can go to any one of those islands and work your way all the way around them and catch lingcod. They're there. There's that many of them up there, right? Sure, there's places that you find bigger concentrations. And that's the fun part about going up there, though, right? You can spend all day and not fish a tenth of those islands and find all the spots. Get on your Navionics, look for underwater structure, rock piles, points, bottom depressions, whatever it may be. Odds are if there's a rock nearby, there's going to be lingcod there.
Totally.
So get out and explore, man. I love it. Like getting in the jet sled and going up there with 4 or 5 guys and just fishing the San Juan.
Well, and it's beautiful, dude.
Oh,
like, it's just
so
amazing
fun.
up there. I say this all the time, but when I'm salmon fishing, doesn't matter where I'm at, we all encounter bottom fish, rockfish, lingcod. Remember those spots. I know we don't get a lot of opportunity anymore to fish, salmon in Area 7, but growing up, that's where I lived, so I fished it a lot. And I would always remember when I was out there and, you get to that slack part of the ebb and you're trolling along and you're catching rockfish. You get too close to the bottom and it's rockfish, lingcod, rockfish, lingcod, rockfish, lingcod. And some of these spots are not traditional lingcod spots. These are our salmon drags.
Right.
Remember those spots. if you're up there salmon fishing and you're catching lingcod on a salmon drag, drop a waypoint and go back there. And a lot of guys are not going to fish those open flats where, for whatever reason, nowadays, like with Navionics, we have such amazing technology in our hand all the time. I can go to my Navionics with relief shading and I can be like, oh yeah, look at that. There's a hump down there.
Yeah.
And there's lingcod on it. So, and that's back to the current break thing. A current break, we think traditionally of, think of rivers. There's a rock. Current break. You end up with a seam, a fast water, slow water seam. We have a lot of that in the San Juans. We have islands, so that's a rock. It creates a seam, fast water, slow water, current break. But like Ben said, underwater reef, well, what is that? That's a current break. You just can't see it. Yep. You have to start to visualize again what's down there. And this reef comes up, the water is going across it this way. Well, your current break is right here.
The backside.
And those lingcod are always going to find those spots where they can get out of the current and not have to use any energy. So you just you got to start thinking like a lingcod.
Yep.
Where do I want to chill until I want to
wait for that bait to come over and I can ambush it because the current pushes the bait around.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, even better, we have an app coming out here pretty shortly, probably within the next month, and you can do exactly what Joey was just saying. You can do a trip log. So say you're fishing salmon, you run into a lingcod, boom. You can mark a waypoint. You can say, oh, we caught a lingcod. It's going to put in the tide and the current, what it was doing. So it's going to do a lot of this work for you. But then you get enough of those waypoints, you have whole trip log for your lingcod, you have trip logs for your salmon. So it's going to be a pretty cool. It's going to be a cool little deal. So, okay, gentlemen. Well, I think that's the end of it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we will see you next week. We're going to be doing a shrimping podcast with Paul Kim, so we'll see you next time. For more hot tips, live, and on-the-water videos, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And don't forget to stop by the shop on Broadway in Everett to get all your local fishing gear.